Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video, and today we're going to talk about something fun. We're going to talk about doing quick and easy non-metallic metal style weapons. And this is the kind of thing that I do on most of my armies. I don't usually do steel weapons and stuff like that. So this can be a fun way to go about painting your army, and it can be a fun way to sort of make your weapons stand out. And I think weapons are an important thing on a miniature. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this spear thing here, whatever this is, into a sort of non-metallic metal style, just using some quick and easy tricks. Now, this isn't high-end NMM work or anything like that. We can use this same trick for power swords, by the way. This is called, you want to paint a whole army and you want to do something unusual, this is a faster way to get about it. What it's going to look like when it's done is something like that. Okay? So, if that kind of gives you an idea, you can see how we have this high contrast look of something. It can be great for things like jade. I'm going to do it in green. You can obviously do it in whatever color you want. If you wanted this in normal steel, you would simply use like a very light blue instead of the green, and you wouldn't have it undercoated in green like I do here. So the colors I'm using today are very simple. It's some Dollar Rowney white ink, Payne's gray, and some Despair green from scale 75. We're going to use those three colors, and that's about it. Let me move my water over here. Okay. So what we're going to do, and we're going to use my previous video on value sketching. We're going to use that. So what we want to do is on... Let's get her up into frame here. There we go. We're going to pick some areas, and we're going to just go ahead and sketch in some pure white highlights. Actually, what I'm going to do is in a moment, I'm going to grab a bigger brush, but that's okay. And then down here. And we want to generally make them opposed to each other. Now, it's important to understand how light works for a real non-metallic metal. Like, you want to understand which sides are going to catch the light and what's not. That kind of thing. In this case, we're going to sort of pick a more stable rule and just kind of roll with it. So in this case, like, the light is coming down and it's going to hit on the tops on this side and the bottoms on this side. That's basically what's going on. Okay. We're going to grab some of the edges, which would also light up. This little snakes are going to be gold, so I'm not going to worry about them. All right, pretty simple. We just get some nice light sketches on there. Nothing too big. Okay, now we're going to go into our Payne's gray ink. I'm going to grab a little bit of my Despair green and work it in there. Not a lot, just a little. And then in the opposition, if this were a sword, I would be running light up one side of the sword and darkness up the other. So we're going to do the same thing on here on this. Just bring those shadows out. Okay. And then we're going to pull those shadows down here underneath. Again, we want to make sure if we've got anything going on like that, that we make sure those shadows are under there. We're still going to replicate light. It's just a lot simpler. Okay? So now we have something like that. Easy peasy. So now we've undershaded our dark and our light. I'm actually going to go to a slightly bigger brush because it's a little easier to glaze with a little more belly in the brush. I'm going to get some of my Despair green and I'm going to work it into a very thin glaze here. I've already thinned it out on my palette quite a bit, so it's pretty much ready to go. Okay. Wick off the excess on a paper towel, as always, very important. And then what I'm going to do is just come in here and pull down a glaze. I'm pulling, the directionality here is really important. Okay? Because I have to go, glazes deposit the majority of their color wherever the brush ends. So you want to pull toward your shadows. Okay? Pretty easy. Now, you have to let that dry. Whenever you're working in glazes, it's very important that we let it dry completely. And you notice I kind of picked a spot like right about there and just worked down, and then a spot right about there and worked up. Okay? I wasn't too picky about it. So now that that's dry, I'm going to grab another glaze, and I'm going to just go down a little farther. And I go all the way into the shadows whenever I do this, because I want to be tinting over that black, that dark part, with my green every time. The key here is this works best when your colors are quite transparent. So when they're things like red and green and stuff like that, and these have to be ones without a lot of white to them, that's when it tends to work the best. Now, from here, that's the basics down. Like, you can see how that looks right now. So if you're really trying to be quick, you can stop this particular step right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little farther, because I'm going to grab some of my green and just start mixing it in with some of my white to get a nice light, almost off blue color. Make sure that's nice and thin. And then I'm going to come in here at the top and try to glaze over this line to just kind of smooth those out and build that up a little bit. Okay. So we just kind of smooth out that quick white glaze, nice and fuzzy. Then I'm going to go back into just my white again. Keep it nice and thin. By the way, I don't recommend you thin paints how I do when I'm thinning these to a glaze. I'm literally touching the brush of paint to my tongue to add spit to it. You don't have to do that. You can just use water. And then here at the edges, I'm just going to very quickly move around and really push that contrast up. Okay? And then in the same way, I'm going to go back into my original Payne's Gray Slight Green mix. And at the very edges of the shadow, I'm just going to build that up, make sure it's nice and dark where I want it to be. Now, if we just stop there, it really wouldn't sell the illusion. Like, to me, that looks okay. But it doesn't look great. We've got our nice contrast. But now's where we're gonna pop it up and take it up to the next level. And the way that we do that is through the edge highlight. So we go back into our same white. Again, I love Daler-Rowney FW white ink for edge highlights. I think it's fantastic. It has a great flow to it. So now what I'm going to do is come in, make sure I can do this on camera. There we go. Because angle is very important. Turn the miniature. And I'm just going to go ahead and edge the whole thing. Now let's get this side. Notice I use the side of the brush. Just simple and easy, nice and quick, very light touch. Not bending the brush at all, not pushing hard, having that paint flow because it's an ink is the key. Okay. The key is those darks will now seem darker because they have a white line next to them. By having that line to set it off, it actually makes the dark look a lot darker. Okay? As well, and here comes the tricky part, we're going to get that center line. Now, if the center line is really raised, then we can just drag our brush sideways along it, but it's not always really raised. On this, it's not super raised. So here's what we're going to do. I'll give you the trick for this. I'm going to take the tip of my brush, okay, and I'm going to run it along the edge into the dark area. Okay? Just like that. So, like, you can see I made a mess of that dark area. Okay? But that's alright. Because then what I'm going to do is let that dry, go back into my real dark green, dark black green, and what we're going to do is we're just going to trace very carefully right along. And in doing so, we're going to reestablish that center line, okay? And basically squidge out the rest. Now I might need to do 2 coats of that darker color just to get it really fully covered, but it's a very easy trick. You can put your line back in. I can bring my green back in. So if you don't have a steady hand and you can't do an ultra thin line, just doing a kind of fat line in the middle and then backing it out is the way to go. Just lean toward the side where it's darker. That way you can just cover it over with its complementary, that very dark black. It's just that easy. So just that fast, boom. We've got our little non-metallic style jade weapon. Again, we can do this in any color. I could do the same thing with purple weapons, red weapons. This can be great with fire. If you want to do a fire weapon or something, you can have this top part be, I would lay down the white and then just cover it with yellow first and then put my reds in. It's very easy. You can continue to push this. You can do more complicated versions of this by having like, by having multiple light and reflection points, all those sorts of things. It's really a matter of how far you want to take it, the amount of time you want to spend. There's lots of fun things you can play with from this very simple technique. But you can see how with undershading we're able to do in what, a few minutes, what would take a long time to try to build up carefully with layers and stuff like that. I don't have to do all that. We just do a little undershading, a little edging, and bing bang boom, we are ready to go. Okay? And then you can just come in and, you know, you can clean it up if you want, depending on how accurate you want to be. Again, I do this for all my troops, so I'm pretty used to it. But I have full confidence that you could do it just as fast. It's a great technique. It's very simple and can be a really fun way to make your individual stuff stand out from, you know, just somebody who has all steel weapons or something like that. Oftentimes weapons which are kind of a focal point on the miniature end up being a little boring when they're just steel and they're just kind of flat and that's it, when really it's the cool part. It's what you're stabbing the bad people, or I guess the good people, depending on your point of view with. So I think making them more colorful and interesting can be fun. But there you go, that's all it takes. The more interesting angles that are on the thing, the more you can play with this. So you can see with the little spears here that these girls have, every one of these has a transition between light and dark on it. They're directionally the same, and we've got the center darkened and stuff like that. So you can really play with this and have some fun messing around with these different angles. And again, this is just the same thing as this, no different. Just that very strong undershade, and then a very strong shadow, and then some glaze over the middle, and a little squidging to fix it out. There you go, just that easy. That's a quick one, but a simple one, and one I hope you enjoyed, one I hope you find useful. I encourage you to do some fun colored weapons. This is also a great trick, by the way, if you want to do like a lightning weapon. You can lay this down first and then draw your lightning in there or something like that. Lots of fun tricks. So play around with it, see what you can do, but I hope that was helpful. So there you go. The keys are, remember, like I said, when you're working in that glaze, make sure you have it nice and thin. 2 glazes is better than 1. So you're not blowing away your undershade. Make sure when you're glazing, as always, you wick off your excess paint. Do not approach this like a wash. You want it to be thin, and all the excess liquid has been wicked off into your paper towel. So there you go. That's our simple non-metallic style weapons. Give it a like if you liked it. Subscribe for more hobby cheating in the future. Share this. Sharing is also always deeply appreciated. And if you have anything you'd like to see in future hobby cheating videos, feel free to drop it into the comments. I always love seeing user comments because then I know the video is going to be helpful to at least one person, which is good. And but as always, I appreciate you watching this one, and we'll see you next time.